Hey everyone, Ken Pearson here. Today we're going to be talking about Greater Than Gatsby Photoshop actions. Now, if you're not familiar with Greater Than Gatsby, they do great post-production Photoshop actions and Lightroom presets. And if you're a photographer that specializes in weddings, newborns, senior portraits, family portraits, even landscapes, this is a tool set that I highly recommend that you have in your toolbox. It's absolutely outstanding. There's a variety of different action sets that you can purchase. They're very inexpensive. You can grab everything together in one bundle. And we're going to show you today very simply and effectively how you can take a photograph that looks like this out of the camera and make it look like this with very minimal effort. Okay? Now, for those of you that are just interested in using Lightroom, they do have a great library of Lightroom presets that you can install, and they're wonderful. They do black and white, color, etc. So I highly recommend taking a look at those, and the links for those will also be down below this video as well as in my video blog post, okay? Now, what we're going to be talking about today is actually the Photoshop actions. And if you're new to Photoshop, or a veteran, one thing you will appreciate is how stupid simple these actually are. Greater Than Gatsby does an amazing job at laying this all out for you. Okay, they do a wonderful job of preparing their library, and you'll see that the photos that we're talking about, even though we're going to start doing some Lightroom adjustments here, we're going to finish in Photoshop, and it is going to be a painless process. If you just know how to click a button, you can get these results. The reason why I wanted to do this video is because there's so many photographers in the market today. The market is saturated. So what is it that you need to be doing to make you more attractive? And the fact of the matter is it's better pictures, better pricing in that case, whatever that may be, but people will pay for good quality photographs. And these are the kind of tools that you want to apply in your post-production to really make your work stand out. It'll help you grow your client base, and it may even give you the possibility to be charging more than some of your competitors, because if the results are there, people will pay. So without further ado, let's get started. All right, so let's get started in Lightroom, and what we're going to do here is we're going to make our baseline adjustments, and when we get happy with those adjustments, we're going to finish the process in Photoshop with the Greater Than Gatsby actions. And again, I'm going to assure you that this is going to be a really painless process for anybody that's new to Photoshop or uncomfortable in Photoshop. You're going to see that you really don't have to do much to get the look and feel that you want. It's just going to be click, 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 and that's it. All right, so first of all, one thing I do want to share with you is off to the side. You can see that I actually have Greater Than Gatsby presets installed that I've gone ahead and purchased, and they give me a really great look just if I want to stay working in Lightroom without going into the Photoshop. They give me a very good starting point, so I can make some adjustments, then save them down to being my own presets once I get that sort of magic formula that I really want to repurpose over and over again in some of my photos. We're not going to be doing that here. We're going to actually be using the Photoshop actions. So the first thing we need to do before we start doing the adjustments, let's talk about this photo. Let's talk about the metadata information and the equipment that was used. So over here, you can see that I have a 1/125th. This is what I shot my shutter speed. This is what I set my shutter speed at. This is what I typically like to set my shutter speed at. I feel I'm in the safe zone when I'm doing that. What I mean by that is that usually when I'm at 1/160th or 1/80th, that's where I can tend to get some camera shake, and I know that if I bump it up over to 1/125 and above, then I get more stability. I don't get that shakiness that sometimes can cause some blurring, especially when you're doing tight shots like this. I don't like to go beyond that unless I have to, because of course, you know, when I get into the 1/200 and so on and so forth, then my backgrounds can get a little bit darker. That wouldn't be the case here just because I have very tight quarters and there's so much white in this room. Now, the next thing I'll tell you is that I shot at 5.6, which you can see, and ultimately the reason why I did this is because I want to get a good depth of field. I want to make sure that most of him is in focus, but I also wanted my daughter in the background to be a little bit in soft focus. She still needs to be in the picture. She's present. She's part of it. But at the same time, the focal point is going to be him. The next thing that I did is I set my ISO at 400, and the lens that I used for this was a Nikkor 24 to 70. Now, the reason why I chose this lens is because I'm working in a tighter space and I want to open up that room a little bit. I mean, the bathtub is a bathtub. It's pretty small. You can see, the size of it compared to the babies being in there, so you know that this is already a small room. And so I want to give that sort of expanded view and give myself some more room to work with when I'm photographing my subjects. Now, the next thing I want to mention here is that I'm also shooting with a Nikon D800. That's a 36 megapixel camera. And the reason why I really like doing that, and I back up a little bit, is because it gives me the flexibility. I know that I can crop down a little bit and not lose any image quality, especially with some of the settings I'm going to be making in advance and is prepping for, knowing that I am going to be doing some cropping in this case. Okay, and then finally, I have an SB900 flash. It's at quarter power and it's bouncing behind me. I have it pointing at the ceiling or the wall and the ceiling behind me, and it's basically filling in the entire room with this really evenly cast light. So you can see here that this is just everything's lit up really, really well. Very, very nice. Okay. The exposure I'm fine with, knowing that I have enhancements that I'm going to be making with this case, and we're going to be bringing out a little bit more. So let's get into the adjustments right now. And let's talk about this. So first of all, with the adjustments off to the side, let's one of the things that you saw that was in the final edit is that we want to give it a very clean, white, clinical look. Okay, so in order to achieve that, we've got to go up here to our temperature, and we're going to go here and we're going to basically say this is going to be minus 20. Okay, and already by doing that, we've eliminated a lot of the yellow that we don't want to see anymore. And my tint, I'm actually going to put as a +5. Okay, I'm going to do that here. All right, so that's actually bringing a little bit of the other colors out, including the reds and so on and so forth. I'm not going to worry about the reds at this point. I'm not really going to deal with them in Lightroom. And the reason why I can do that is because I know what my end result is going to be. I know the workflow that I'm going down. I know the path that I'm taking. I know the filters that I'm going to use or the actions that I'm going to use. And I know that will ultimately deal with this in the end. So I don't really have to do too much with that. I don't want to start being very picky about, using brushes to control different colors and whatnot. So this allows me to simplify my process and avoid this altogether. So the other thing I'm going to do here is I'm not going to adjust my exposure. I think my exposure is fine. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to bring down the highlights 100%, and I'm going to bring up my shadows 100%. Look at that, okay? That just already looks spectacular. Now his eyes are coming out. The image is starting to take form. We're really getting to see some progress being made here. Just to bring it back down again to 0 or just around that area, you can see the difference that it makes already, just bringing the highlights down and the shadows up. Okay. Now, next thing that's important is we've got a lot of white here, and I want white in this picture. I want to really showcase that white background, that white bathtub and whatnot. So I definitely want to bring my whites up, and I'm probably going to bring them here to about, let's just say 56 is fine. Okay, this is great. So already making another huge difference. So going back on that, just bringing it down and bringing it back up again, you can see I'm making a huge difference. I do around 50, 55, 56. Okay, here we go. All right, now the blacks, I want to bring those down a little bit. Okay, I'm going to bring those down over here to about, let's just say maybe, we'll just say 45, 40 is fine. Okay, over here. All right, great. Now the next thing I'm going to do, and I always like to do this, is really work with my clarity. I'm a clarity fan. Some people like to soften it up. I like to just bring it up quite a bit. Now here's what we're doing in this case, and you need to be careful when you're working with children like this, because the great thing about babies is they have a very soft and innocent look, and when you pump up the clarity over here, you're bringing out a lot of the texture. So we're going to have to compensate for that with luminance and also just doing some other things to just sort of smoothen that skin out. Okay, so I'm going to do that over here. I'm going to bring my clarity to about, let's just say 45. I'll do that around here, and we'll leave that here. Now the next thing I just want to call to your attention is that he has some, spaghetti sauce here. So I mean, obviously that's why he's taking a bath. I'm not going to clean that up in this photo. Normally I would get rid of these sort of little imperfections and whatnot and take care of that in the final photo. But for the sake of this workflow, I'm just going to go ahead and just continue without cleaning those things up. All right, so basically down here, I'm not going to remove any of the reds, okay? I would work more with this if I wasn't bringing it into Photoshop, but the fact that I am bringing in the Photoshop, I'm not really going to worry too much about that, okay? Because I know what my workflow is going to be down the road. road. I'm just going to leave it the way it is. One thing I really like about the, shooting with a 36 megapixel camera in this case is that you're going to see, look how good this looks. I mean, there's very little grain in this. It's a very nice, smooth skin. And what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to bring the sharpness a little bit more here, and you can see that it's bringing in some of that grain back. So what I want to do is I want to counter that with luminance. Okay, so I'm going to put that there, and you can see now that he's smooth again. So when I bring the luminance down, you can see that I have that grainy texture, and it's not really the grain, but it's more of the texture of his skin. Now when we're working with babies, we want to bring that luminance up a little bit, so that can go away. Look how nice that looks, plus the sharpness is really bringing out his hair and his eyelashes, okay? All right, finally, what I'm going to do down here is this is going to get bright just a little bit when I do this. There, we've popped that up, the enable profile corrections, and of course I'm going to do these two as well, and then I think we're in pretty good shape. Usually I do a little bit of a vignette. First of all, I never do a vignette in Lightroom when I know I'm going to Photoshop. I would always bring that back into Lightroom afterwards and apply the vignette. Why? Because I'm going to do my final cropping in Lightroom. Why in Lightroom versus Photoshop? Because in Photoshop it's permanent. In Lightroom you can make as many cropping adjustments as you want. You never have to settle with what you finally have. You can always make some adjustments there. So I crop first, do the vignette, and then basically, I typically would do something like this. But however, when I have this white look that I'm going for, this bleach wash look, the vignette shadowing would be a distraction to this. So I don't want to do that, especially because I'm going to be cropping tighter than what you see right here. All right. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to bring this into Adobe Photoshop, and I'm going to edit this copy with Lightroom adjustments. Okay, so now that we're in Photoshop, let's talk about a few things before we apply any adjustments, okay? First of all, every time I bring an image into Photoshop, as most people do, what you're supposed to do is basically duplicate the background image, okay? So the reason why we do this is because we want to make sure that if we're going to make any adjustments, accidental or calculated, that we want to do those on an image that is not the background. So we always have an image to work with that's preserved. It's the core image of what the actual photo is. So we keep this as our master, and we work off duplicated ones like this. Okay, so usually I do this. Now here's what I really like about the Greater Than Gatsby action sets is that they're usually all done. All of the actions are adjustment layers. That means that I don't have to do this. So it's one less thing that I have to remember when I'm working with Greater Than Gatsby action sets. I don't have to worry about tampering with my background image because everything will be on adjustment layers. Now before we get into using the adjustments I want to make, let's just quickly take a look at the action sets that I have here. So you can see that these are all the Greater Than Gatsby action sets that I've purchased and installed, and you can get them as a group or you can get them individually. And also you keep an eye open because they have new action sets that come out every now and then, so you want to you definitely don't want to miss out on some of the new things that they have coming out. But you can purchase what's important to you, or you can just grab the entire thing, and I think that they have some volume discounting there, so when the more you buy, you're getting a deal, of course. So in this specific instance, I'm going to be working with the Newborn Essentials ones. It has some ones in there that I like. Of course, they all do, but for what I'm trying to accomplish here, the look and feel that I'm looking to achieve can be found here. So if I open this up, you get a sense of what these libraries look like, and you sort of see that they have retouching brushes here, so you can automatically do some retouching. These are advanced Photoshop features. I don't want to scare people with this. At the same time, we're going to, like I said, I'm going to keep true to what I said in the very beginning. It's a one-click deal for the kind of adjustments that I'm going to be making here, the actions I'm going to be using, but I'm just giving you a sort of guided tour as to what you have to your availability here. So you see that you have, color cast corrections. Everything's filed really nicely. Color enhancements is where we want to be. Okay, these are the enhancements I'm going to actually put into this. I'm not going to do any brush work. Actually, I lie. I'll do some brush work in the eyes just to bring out the irises when we're done. But basically, you can see it's a very, very well-organized action sequence. And the way it works is as follows. We're going to get right into it. The ones that I'm going to use in this photo are going to be Hush Little Baby, and I'm going to use Buckle My Shoe and Little Boy Blue, okay? So the reason why I'm doing that together is because I can use these individually, or I can combine them to get a different effect that's a little bit more of a recipe of using 3 or 4 together. So it doesn't make a difference what sequence I use these in. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to just start with the Hush Little Baby, and all I have to do is just click play, okay? So I click play. It applies the actions, and you can see here, now it applied the actions in an adjustment layer folder across the top here, and these are all the adjustments that are being made. Now, what I like about the Photoshop actions versus the Lightroom is the degree of control that I get over what they've done for me here, okay? So I can go ahead, if I don't like certain things, I can turn things off. I can, you can see I'm making little adjustments here. I can even change the layer opacity of each one of these, okay? I can get in here, make some further adjustments if I'd like to. So I'm not scaring you into all of this. I just want to share with you that, if you don't want to do anything, you don't want to use anything out of the box, just hit the play button and then the image changes. Already, turning this layer off and on, just that one adjustment has been a huge difference in the image that I have right now. I think everybody would agree with that. Now, one thing you can do, and I'll probably be doing in this case, is I can adjust the opacity, and this is basically going to determine how prominent I want that specific effect to appearing in the actual photo itself. So most of the time you see them at 50%, okay, which is where this one was. You can see if I push this over the top, it's really making it too bright, too red. I'm not liking those colors. So I'm going to keep it down here at the 50% mark, okay? Just do that. All right, so the next one that I said that I wanted to apply, again, it's this simple. I'm going to go over here to the Little Boy Blue. And the reason why I want to use this one is not just for the effect that it gives me, but also now the Little Boy Blue is going to help me bring out the eyes, okay? And it's also going to subdue some of the reds that I'm seeing here, okay? So I want to get that taken care of. So I'm going to hit, here we go again. All I'm going to do is hit play. And now you can see that it's given me a little bit more of a wash. Like I said, it's taken out this. He still has a complexion. Over here, the eyes are now very, very blue. Even for my daughter, that brings her out in the background as well, okay? And again, you can see what things look like before and after by just turning these off. Now, you can see what this Little Boy Blue looks like without the other filter that I applied, the Hush Little Baby. And so that's where you can start to mix and match and see what's going to work for you, okay? And then finally, the last adjustment that I want to make, at least for the colors in this case, is going to be the Buckle My Shoe, okay? So I'm going to go here and I'm going to add the Buckle My Shoe, hit play again, and now it's given me even more of this sort of contemporary look that we see in a lot of photos. Really like it a lot. Now, there's a couple of things I do want to change in this case, is that I'd like to bring this down just a little bit. Maybe I don't want to have it that prominent, okay? So I'm going to bring this down to about 30, but I'm happy with the other ones. Now, what I'd like to do before I finish up here, and yes, we are pretty much finished with our color adjustments by using these 3 items, then ultimately what I'm going to have here is that I'm going to go and I want to go back into my different options that I have here with my libraries, and I have this one over here that they offer called Clean Workflow. And so in the Clean Workflow one, what I want to look for is the iris sparkle, okay? Because we want to bring out his eyes. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to click this. And now this is going to make an adjustment layer with a mask that basically I'm going to paint on the eyes, okay? So that's all you're pretty much doing here. Layer masks are really important in Photoshop. They give you a lot of controls. To sort of add what it is that you want. So the way that, if you're not familiar with layer masks, the way it's going to work quickly here is that I'm going to go ahead and paint his eyes. And when the color is white, that means I'm painting. And when the color is black, if I make a mistake, then I'm basically switching it to black and I'm erasing what I did. Okay, so I'm going to go back over here to paint. And I want to make sure that this is selected here. And watch this. I'm just going to do this here. Now you can see my opacity is defaulting to 70, okay? I don't really like to work to change my opacity for the default settings. What I like to do is work with my layer opacity, okay? So, most of the time, unless you're going for something that's a little bit unique, I would trust the opacity settings that have been set in the action set, okay? So I'm going to go over here and I'm just going to continue painting his eyes, okay? And look at this. I mean, it's just night and day. It's just I'm staying within the blue. That's all I want to do. Now, look, also something to consider. As I'm painting over and over and over, I'm sort of making this, I'm exposing more and more, okay? The more I paint over, the more it's almost like rubbing something on, that the more you're rubbing on, the stronger the effect that you're getting, okay? So I'm doing that. Look at the other eye that's out of the box compared to this one, you know? And this is what people like when they see the babies. They just, you know, the eyes are just tell so much of a story. So basically I'm putting this on over here, okay? I'm going to keep just painting like this. All right, perfect. Now, let's take a look at this. I'm going to back this out. Okay, that might be a little bit too strong. Okay, but the difference is that if I use the opacity up front and did something really strong, then I'm stuck with that opacity for the paintbrush. That's why I want to use my opacity for my layer over here, and I can bring that down just a little bit. Okay, so it's not so obnoxious. I mean, here if I go full throttle, you know, like that just looks like something out of a science fiction movie. But over here I'm going to bring this down probably to about maybe, let's just say, I don't know, we'll do 40. Okay, maybe we'll do less than that. We'll do 30. Let's do 30. Okay, something like that. That looks a little bit more natural. The eyes stick out, but it doesn't look too crazy. All right, and guys, that's it. We're done. Okay, I'm happy with this picture the way it is. Okay, now I would tell you that from my own personal preference, there are some touch-up things that I would be doing. I'd be cleaning up some of the slobber here and so on and so forth. I'd make this a little bit more, you know, presentable. But at the same time, that's not the purpose of this demonstration. It's just to show you just quickly adding these filters like this. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save this, and we don't have to be in Photoshop anymore. All right, now we're back in Lightroom, and we have our Photoshop actions applied to our photo. This is the Lightroom version that we started with before we took it into Photoshop, and you can just see the difference. All right, now that we're back, all right, now that we're back in Lightroom, you can see the difference that Photoshop greater than Gatsby actions. All right, now that we're back in Lightroom, you can see the complete difference. This is as far as we took it, the photo in Lightroom, and this is where we've applied the greater than Gatsby actions after this. So some of this can also be accomplished in Lightroom, but I really don't think you're going to get the degree of change, the degree of control over these different actions that are available to you. All right, now that we're back in Lightroom, you can see this is where we left off from Lightroom. These are all the Lightroom adjustments that we made before we took it into Photoshop, and then this is after we've saved the file from Photoshop, after we applied our 3 greater than Gatsby actions plus the iris enhancement. And when you get into this, you know, All right, now that we're back in Lightroom, you can see the difference between the 2 images, obviously. This is the Lightroom adjustments that we made before we brought this into Photoshop, and these are the enhancements. These are the 3 action sets plus the iris enhancement that we actually added to the photo before we saved it and brought it back into Lightroom. So it's been registered now in our Lightroom catalog down below, so we have that available to us. And you know, just you can see if you click on here and you zoom in, you can just see the major difference in what we have here, you know, and this is what I was talking about. It even actually cleaned up some of the stains that we had here out of the box, though I would have chosen to do more. But in this specific instance over here, you can just see the difference in the eyes, what you've been able to accomplish with that action set. Now, you can do more in Lightroom. I don't want to knock Lightroom and basically say that, you know, you have to get Photoshop to do this. You can get some great results in Lightroom, especially with their presets combined with your own experience and doing some of those changes, applying some enhancement brushes and so on and so forth. But at the same time, you can see that if you're familiar with Lightroom and how to make those adjustments, you can see that what I've showed you in the action sets within Photoshop, you really have a greater degree of control. Plus, you can accomplish those things much faster, I believe. So the last thing I would do in this specific instance here is ultimately just go ahead and then I would take this specific image, the one that we were working with, and now I would crop it. There's a couple of things I'd like to get rid of here. This little yellow or yellow-greenish toy over here is a distraction. The product placement item over here is a little bit of distraction, and these 2 are the focal point. And plus, I have a really good, really something that's well balanced here to work with. I've got that sort of triangle that's going on here. If you look down here, that is sort of a perspective that's going down to her. So I've got that triangle to work with. So what I'm going to do is, in this case, and like I said, I always do my cropping in Lightroom so I can really get more control, and then of course I can reset my crop as many times as I want. That's what I like to do over here. I'm just going to bring this up like this, and then I can crop here. Let's try that, and that looks really nice. Look at that, no image degradation. That's what I love about that 36 megapixel. So something like that to work with. Again, I can play with this all I want as far as trying to get it right, you know, do what I want to get to be my final picture. But you know, definitely when you look at the before and after in all of this, the original Lightroom settings versus what you see here, or the original out of the camera versus what you see here, greater than Gatsby action sets again are an essential component to any photographer's toolbox. Thanks for watching, and leave comments down below.